Welcome to the 2011 Carolina Varsity State Championship Football Review. I'm John Teal. To my left is the founder and owner of Carolina Varsity, Dale Ross. Dale, Saturday, lunchtime game, we saw the small 3A Havelock in West Rowan. Havelock had been undefeated, was running through people, and they were able to pretty much impose their will and do what they had been doing all season. And, you know, we had thought maybe this might be a little bit different, but obviously it turned out not to be much different than what we had been hearing about. 38-6 final score. The night before, Crest, representing the West in the 3AA game, rematch with Northern Guilford, who beat them last year by 1 point. I picked Crest to win this one in a close one, and it was more of the same of last year, but in not such a good fashion. Crest got behind initially, came back and tied it, and after that it was all Northern Guilford winning 31-7. I know you didn't get to go to the games, but as you saw the scores come across, did anything catch you by surprise or shock you?
I was more surprised by the Crest game. I too picked Crest and did feel like Crest could pull this game out. So it was a big shocker to see them lose, not just lose, but to lose as big as they did. Haven't had a chance to watch it on Time Warner yet. And the game Saturday, you know, I figured, you know, we've heard a lot about Havelock and how they could compete with 4A teams. You know, I thought it was going to be a tall order for West Rowan to be able to pull that out, but you know, I figured the state championships, you know, the past experience might help them at least play the game close, and that game too, you know, turned out to be a bigger score. I'm not surprised at the winner there, but
I think we both picked Havelock, but obviously didn't expect it to go that way. The Northern Guilford Crest game, Raheem Ledbetter, who's the big stud on the offense and defense, runs the ball, plays defense, got hurt in the first quarter. I'm not sure if it was an ankle or hamstring, but was injured and didn't play anymore. But really, I don't think he would have made a difference in who won. Maybe the score might not have been as bad. TJ Logan is a junior, about 175-pound running back for Northern Guilford, and he was lights out, one of the better performances I've seen in a state championship game. But the telling story was total yards, and it was just outrageous. It was 403 to 181, so you know they more than doubled them. And 345 to 102 was the rushing yards. So that right there told the story. The Logan kid, he scored 5 touchdowns, and that included he had a 37-yard run and a 19-yard pass reception, and then he finished with 2 one-yard runs and 7-yard runs. So he really pretty much just dominated. I mean, if you're on defense for Crest, I think every time you've got to look for number 8. Northern Guilford has a coach who's, I think he's won state championships at Hartsville, South Carolina with some great teams. His name's Johnny Roscoe. He took Lancaster to a state final years ago in South Carolina, which is a tall task. And they did a good job. They were ready for him. They ran away from Jonathan Bullard, who's probably a high 4-star pick recruit. And they stayed away from him. He did show some brilliance a few times, running some people down. They put him in a offensive scheme one time where he threw the ball long and the receiver just didn't come up with it. Probably should have. Been a little bit of a tough catch, but not bad. You know, just one of those nights. Nothing really seemed to go right no matter what Coach Barnes did. So he gets another shot a week from this Saturday coaching the Shrine Bowl. But good season for Crest. Once they got their quarterback issues figured out, they have a sophomore quarterback. They finally went with him, I guess, about the 4th game of the year, and things seem to go pretty good for them. So I think, you know, overall, I just don't think Crest had quite as much talent as they did last year, and I don't believe we realize that. Now, the small 3A game, Havelock just came out. Every player you looked at on the field, athlete, athlete, athlete. They were just loaded with athletes. And West Rowan, they made a gamble a few times on some things and didn't go their way and kind of got themselves into a little bit of a hole. And really it just didn't work for them. And I thought the offensive and defensive lines for West Rowan, which most people did, would be able to keep them in the game and make it really tough competition, maybe wear them down. And it just didn't happen. And I thought the night before with Northern Guilford having a lot of guys going both ways and a smaller running back, they'd get wore down. But, you know, if you can't catch them or you can't get to them to block them or they're running a scheme and you can't figure it out, sometimes it doesn't really matter. That's what we saw with Havelock, and Jim Bob Bryant's coach there, and when it gets Scott Young, who's won 3 straight. So there wasn't any coaching issues. One team, I think each team had the right ideas. One team was just able to impose their will and do what they wanted to do. And sometimes there's nothing you can do, no matter how you coach. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see how West Rowan comes back next year. And what you got to remember, West Rowan lost 3 games, which they had been almost three full years without losing, thinking 08 Davie had beat them early in the year. But West Rowan lost to Mooresville by a touchdown. Mooresville played in that regional semifinal 4A against Porter Ridge. Lost to South Point, who won the state 3A, which is not subdivided in South Carolina for 3A. And then they lost this game. So they had a pretty daggone good season, but for them, losing 3 games doesn't look so good.
Exactly.
You know, can't fault those guys. Havelock undefeated, I think 16-0. You know, that's perfection. You can't ask for much more. Plus, they beat Newbern, who was in the state regional final against Scotland. Northern Guilford, their only loss this year, first game of the year, it was Greensboro Page's second game. They lost 35-14. And obviously, Crest, their losses were the big game for them, rivalry game with Shelby, and they lost another light rivalry game really with Burns, and even a third rivalry game with South Point until they lost this night. So I feel confident the 2 best teams in the state won their subclasses, and I'd love to have seen those 2 play, Northern Guilford and Havelock. And who knows, if you didn't have subdivided, maybe Northern Guilford would fall to the west. But you know, once again, we've been robbed of seeing the 2 best teams in the state play one another somewhere in the playoffs.
Sure.
So, okay, so state 3A, state 3AA winners were big. We had Northern Guilford repeating. Small 3A, we had Havelock coming back, and that's it for high school football in 3A for 2011.